catoblepas, wildebeest, ancient bovid. Medieval bestiaries often warned of a nightmare beast called the catoblepas. Its name in Greek means the one who looks downward, and legends say it is killed with a single glance or poisoned breath. Descriptions tell of a creature with a bull's body, a heavy head too large to lift, and eyes so deadly that even meeting its gaze spelled instant death. The mystery is that this monster almost certainly had real inspiration. Most scholars connect it to sightings of African wildebeest or buffalo-like bovids. These animals, with their downward-angled heads, shaggy manes, and menacing horns, would have appeared strange and dangerous to early travelers. Some historians also note that in Ethiopia, where much of this folklore was gathered by Greco-Roman writers, wildebeest were plentiful. The animal's posture, head perpetually hanging low, as if cursed, fit perfectly with the catoblepas myth. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder described the beast in Natural History, claiming it was so hideous and deadly that few dared approach it. In reality, wildebeest are herbivores, though they can weigh 250 kilograms, 550 pounds, and are known for powerful charges when threatened. A myth about death by gaze likely grew from a simple observation: a massive, awkward beast, forever staring at the ground, looking as though it carried a curse. Unicorn, narwhal, okapi, giraffe. The unicorn, white horse, single-spiraled horn, pure enough to only be tamed by virgins, is one of the most enduring myths in human history. Ancient Greek writers like Ctesias described them as beasts of India, with horns that could neutralize poison. By the Middle Ages, unicorn horns, called alicorns, were prized treasures, ground into powders as antidotes and sold for sums greater than gold. But when you strip the story down to its bones, the horns weren't horns at all. They were narwhal tusks, taken from Arctic waters and funneled into Europe by Viking traders. A single tusk, growing up to 3 meters, 10 feet long, was worth a fortune in 16th century markets. Queen Elizabeth I is said to have owned one valued at £10,000, enough to buy an entire castle. And it wasn't just tusks. Medieval travelers misidentified giraffes as camelopards, half camel, half leopard, and okapis, with their striped legs and elusive nature, became African unicorns in local stories. Each strange real animal was absorbed into a larger patchwork of legend. The unicorn wasn't born in forests of magic. It was stitched together by misunderstanding, trade, and awe at creatures that seemed too bizarre to be real. Yet somehow, the myth became bigger than the animals that inspired it. Chickcharney, extinct giant owl, catoblepas. In the dense pine forests of the Bahamas, locals have long spoken of the chickcharney, a 3-foot-tall, red-eyed creature with twisted feathers, capable of blessing or cursing those who crossed it. Travelers in the 1800s described villagers swearing that respectful wanderers might gain good fortune, while mockers could expect lifelong bad luck. For centuries, it was treated as pure folklore, a Caribbean cousin of goblins or wood spirits. But science later uncovered fossils of an extinct bird, the giant owl, catoblepas. This predator, which lived on the islands thousands of years ago, stood nearly 1 meter, 3.3 feet, tall and had a wingspan that stretched over 2 meters, 6.5 feet. Unlike today's owls, catoblepas was probably ground-dwelling and unable to fly long distances, lurking instead in low forests, exactly where legends placed the chickcharney. Owls already held symbolic weight in human cultures, often linked to omens, death, or wisdom. Combine that with an outsized, strange species haunting an island, and you have the perfect recipe for myth. Oral traditions preserved the creature's presence long after extinction, turning bones into stories and memories into warnings. The chickcharney reminds us that many monsters aren't conjured from imagination alone. They're echoes of real animals that once stared back at human ancestors in the dark. werewolf/giant wolves, dire wolf, Canis dirus. The fear of wolves runs deep in human history. From Norse sagas describing Fenrir, the monstrous wolf destined to devour Odin, to medieval Europe's werewolf trials, tales of giant wolves stalking the night are everywhere. But behind those legends lurks a real predator, the dire wolf. These apex canines, Canis dirus, roamed the Americas until about 10,000 years ago. They weren't simply oversized gray wolves. Fossils reveal they were heavier, more muscular, and built for power rather than speed. A typical dire wolf weighed up to 68 kilograms, 150 pounds, with crushing jaws capable of delivering a bite force of over 1,300 newtons, strong enough to shatter bone. Unlike modern wolves that rely on endurance hunts, dire wolves likely used brute force and teamwork to bring down massive prey, horses, bison, even young mammoths. Their remains are famously preserved in the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where more than 4,000 individuals have been found, an entire lost world of snarling predators caught in asphalt traps. Imagine stumbling across bones that size centuries ago. It would be easy to believe giant wolves once ruled the earth. As humans spread across the Americas, memories of dire wolves lingered in oral traditions. Combine that with nightly howls from living wolf packs, and it's no surprise people spoke of cursed men transforming into beasts. The dire wolf may be gone, but its echo lives on in the myths of monsters, with teeth too large to forget. Sea serpents, oarfish, giant squid sailors feared them for centuries, long, scaled bodies twisting through the waves, eyes glinting like lanterns, monsters large enough to capsize ships. Sea serpent tales appear everywhere, the Midgard serpent in Norse myth, the Leviathan of the Bible, the sea dragons sketched in medieval maps. But many of those stories had real biological roots. Take the oarfish, the world's longest bony fish. Specimens can reach 11 meters, 36 feet, with silvery, ribbon-like bodies that shimmer and undulate like a serpent. They live in the deep ocean, but occasionally wash ashore during storms or after earthquakes. In Japanese folklore, oarfish are considered harbingers of tsunamis and earthquakes, nicknamed Ryugu no Tsukai, or messengers from the sea god's palace. Then there's the giant squid, Architeuthis ducks, a creature with eyes the size of dinner plates, up to 27 centimeters, 11 inches, across, the largest in the animal kingdom. Tentacles can stretch over 10 meters, 33 feet, lined with serrated suckers strong enough to scar sperm whales. For centuries, only dead specimens floated to the surface, fueling myths of Kraken and serpents. It wasn't until 2004 that the first live giant squid was filmed, proving the monster was real. These creatures don't need fire-breathing or curses to inspire fear. When something longer than a school bus rises from the depths, twisting silently beneath the waves, your mind does the rest, writing legends on the spot. Griffin, Protoceratops fossils. The griffin, lion's body, eagle's head, wings stretching wide, was a cornerstone of ancient art. Scythian nomads carved them into gold, Persians wove them into fabric, and Greeks told stories of them guarding mountains of gold in Central Asia. But why such a strange fusion? Archaeology offers a clue. Along the old Silk Road, especially in Mongolia's Gobi Desert, travelers often stumbled on exposed dinosaur bones. Among the most common were fossils of Protoceratops, a beaked dinosaur that lived about 75 million years ago. These creatures grew around 2 meters, 6.5 feet long, with parrot-like beaks, sturdy four-legged bodies, and a bony frill at the back of the skull. To someone without paleontology, it looked uncannily like a mashup of bird and beast. The American folklorist Adrian Mayer argued that nomadic Scythians, who mined gold in these fossil-rich deserts, likely passed down stories of these strange skeletons. A quadruped with claws, a raptor-like beak, and a protective frill could easily be remembered as a half-lion, half-eagle monster guarding treasure. Even Herodotus in the 5th century BCE repeated tales of griffins battling men over gold. Instead of fantasy alone, the griffin myth might have been the world's first attempt at paleontology, ancient eyes staring at dinosaur bones and trying to make sense of them. Mermaid, manatee/dugong. The image of the mermaid, half woman, half fish, swims across centuries of myth, from the Assyrian goddess Atargatis, who transformed into a fish around 1000 BCE, to Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid. Stories of sea maidens lure sailors with beauty and danger. But real-life encounters often involved something less glamorous: manatees and dugongs. These marine mammals, found in the warm shallows of the Atlantic and Indo-Pacific, grow up to 4 meters, 13 feet long, and weigh over 500 kilograms, 1,100 pounds. With rounded faces, forward-facing eyes, and even breasts when nursing calves, they appeared startlingly human-like when glimpsed from a distance at sea. Christopher Columbus, writing in 1493, described seeing 3 mermaids off the coast of Hispaniola, noting they were not half as beautiful as painted, for their faces had some masculine traits. Mermaid lore thrived in the age of exploration, when sailors spent months isolated at sea. Under moonlight, the silhouette of a manatee lifting its head could easily spark tales of alluring water spirits. And with dugongs grazing seagrass meadows in the Indian Ocean, their long tails and curving bodies fit neatly into siren mythology inherited from Greek tradition. The real animals are harmless, slow-moving vegetarians, yet their role in inspiring one of the world's most captivating myths proves a simple truth. When human imagination meets the sea, even a sea cow can become a siren. Cyclops, mammoth skulls. Greek myths describe the Cyclops as one-eyed giants, blacksmiths of the gods, builders of massive walls, and in Homer's Odyssey, the savage shepherd Polyphemus who trapped Odysseus. But what if those tales didn't start with imagination, but with bones? In the Mediterranean, particularly on islands like Crete and Sicily, ancient people often uncovered Pleistocene mammoth and mastodon skulls. These belonged to dwarf mammoths, which shrank in size due to island evolution, yet still left skulls larger than a human's torso. Right in the middle of those skulls was a large hollow opening, not an eye socket, but the nasal cavity where the trunk once attached. Without knowledge of elephants, early Greeks interpreted these as the remains of colossal one-eyed beings. Some of these skulls measured nearly 60 centimeters, 2 feet, across, and when placed beside human bones, the contrast reinforced the idea of a race of giants. Historian Adrian Mayer has argued that Cyclops myths represent an early form of paleontological folklore, humans using storytelling to explain mysterious fossils. So when shepherds stumbled on huge bones eroding from caves, the simplest explanation was terrifying: giants with a single massive eye once walked the land. And just like that, paleontology was woven into mythology centuries before science gave it a name. Dragon, giant Chinese salamander/crocodile dragons, dominate mythology from China to Europe. In China, they're wise and rain-bringing. In Europe, fire-breathing monsters hoard gold. Yet no other myth is so widespread across cultures. Why? Because multiple very real creatures fed into the dragon image. In East Asia, the giant Chinese salamander, Andreas davidianus, was a prime suspect. Growing up to 1.8 meters, 6 feet, and weighing more than 60 kilograms, 130 pounds. These wrinkled, river-dwelling amphibians make eerie, low-pitched cries that sound like a wailing infant. Ancient villagers, hearing these dragon cries, believed river spirits lived in the waters. For thousands of years, they were treated as living dragons, guardians of rivers and bringers of storms. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later Europe, crocodiles gave another spark to dragon lore. The Nile crocodile can reach 6 meters, 20 feet, and weigh nearly 1,000 kilograms, 2,200 pounds. With armored scales, gaping jaws, and the ability to ambush with terrifying speed, they fit perfectly into the dragon mold. Greek travelers who encountered crocodiles for the first time often described them as serpentine monsters with scales like armor, birthing fire-breathing exaggerations when stories traveled home. When bones of dinosaurs like Mosasaurus and other giant reptiles began eroding from cliffs, they added even more fuel. The dragon wasn't born from a single beast. It was a composite of the strangest, most fearsome creatures humans ever stumbled across. Kraken, giant squid, architeuthis ducks. Norse sagas spoke of the Kraken, a sea monster so massive it could be mistaken for an island. Sailors swore it dragged entire ships beneath the waves with its tentacles, creating whirlpools in its wake. Medieval maps marked oceans with warnings, "Here be monsters." And unlike many myths, this one turned out to be grounded in truth. The giant squid is very real. Rare and elusive, it can reach lengths of over 13 meters, 43 feet, with tentacles lined by suckers armed with serrated rings capable of gouging flesh. Its eyes are the largest in the animal kingdom, spanning up to 27 centimeters, 11 inches, across, perfect for detecting shapes in the dark abyss. For centuries, only fragments washed ashore, carcasses on Icelandic beaches, beaks pulled from the stomachs of sperm whales. Each partial glimpse fueled the legend. In 1755, a bishop in Norway published one of the earliest written accounts, describing the Kraken as wider than an island and warning sailors to avoid it at all costs. It wasn't until 2004 that scientists finally filmed a live giant squid in its natural habitat, confirming what had been dismissed as sailors' fantasy. The Kraken myth lingers because the real animal is already alien enough. A predator with dinner plate eyes and arms as long as a bus doesn't need embellishment. It just needs to rise from the deep once in a while to remind us why legends exist. Basilisk, king cobra/monitor lizard. Medieval Europe feared the basilisk, the king of serpents. Writers swore it could kill with a glance, poison wells with its breath, and leave death in its trail. Bestiaries described it as serpent, rooster, or a chimera of both. Farmers in the Middle Ages even blamed mysterious livestock deaths on basilisks hiding in barns. The most likely inspirations were real animals that already inspired awe and terror. The king cobra and large monitor lizards. The king cobra, Ophiophagus hanna, stretching up to 5.5 meters, 18 feet, is the world's longest venomous snake. When threatened, it raises 1/3 of its body upright, flaring a hood that can reach the height of a human chest. Its hiss is so deep it resembles a growl, more mammal than snake. One bite delivers enough neurotoxin to kill an elephant, which explains tales of creatures feeling animals with a breath. In Africa and parts of Asia, travelers also encountered Nile monitors and Komodo dragons. Early reports of Komodos described them as fire-breathing due to the steam rising from their mouths after feeding in tropical heat. Medieval storytellers didn't need to stretch far. A serpent with a killing stare and venom in its fangs was already terrifying. The basilisk became a fusion of fact and fear, where glimpses of real predators were exaggerated into something supernatural. And yet, when you watch a cobra rise and lock its unblinking eyes on you, the idea of dying from its gaze doesn't feel so far-fetched. Thunderbird, teratorn/giant raptors. Indigenous traditions across North America tell of the thunderbird, a colossal bird whose wing beats made thunder and whose eyes flashed lightning. Tribes like the Lakota, Ojibwe, and Kwakwaka'wakw described it as a guardian spirit, fierce yet protective, often battling great serpents that threatened humans. The thunderbird wasn't just a monster. It was a cosmic force tied to weather and balance. But behind the legend may have been remnants of real giants. The Teratornithidae, or teratorns, were enormous birds of prey that lived until about 10,000 years ago in the Americas. The largest known, Argentavis magnificens, had a wingspan estimated at 7 meters, 23 feet, nearly twice that of today's largest condors. It weighed around 70 to 72 kilograms, 150 to 160 pounds, yet could soar effortlessly for hours on thermal currents. Fossils discovered in Argentina in the 1970s confirmed their scale, and their beaks alone measured over 30 centimeters, a foot. Even more recent were the giant condors and eagles of Ice Age North America. People living alongside these predators didn't need much imagination to create stories of sky monsters. When a bird the size of a small plane circled overhead, carrying prey as large as a deer fawn, the idea of a stormbringer didn't feel symbolic. It felt immediate. The thunderbird sits at the crossroads of faith, memory, and paleontology, a myth that likely carries echoes of real encounters with lost giants, written into the sky itself. Thanks for flying through legends and lost beasts with me today. If you enjoyed uncovering their hidden truths, subscribe and leave a like. More worlds of mystery and wonder wait in the next story. Let's explore them together.